Welcome to the podcast, fellow griever. I'm Melissa, your host, and I'm with you on this journey because my own incredible 21-year-old son, Alex, died by suicide on August 7th in 2016. My world was shattered, but slowly, bit by bit, I began the difficult journey of rebuilding a new life, just like you may be doing right now. So know that I see you, because I am you. Thank you so much for being here. It truly means more than I can say. And if you are new to the podcast, please consider listening to the introduction, Meet Me, episode number 1, which is now linked in the show notes starting in late season 6. Listen to know what to expect from the podcast, to learn more about me, and so that you will know all that I offer in my community for support, connection, and healing. If you are not a new listener and haven't listened to this Meet Me episode recently, it's updated and you may learn something new. Every week, we will continue to explore the questions that haunt us, seek the courage to uncover the healing tools within us, and offer the comfort of a community we all need so very much. Come along with me, because this is so very lonely, but we do not have to be alone. Together, let's choose to find meaning and even happiness amid the leftover pieces before us. Welcome to today's episode. Hello and welcome, fellow griever. You have reached the Leftover Pieces Suicide Loss Conversations podcast, and I'm Melissa, your host. Today we have season 6, episode 44, and my guest today is an incredible woman named Julie. Julie Halpert, in her own words, is an award-winning journalist who writes articles for dozens of widely read media outlets, including the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, covering a wide range of topics. She also teaches an environmental journalism course at the University of Michigan. She is the co-founder, along with her husband Scott, of Garrett Space, a suicide prevention nonprofit. Which, of course, brings me to the main reason that Julie is a guest today. Julie is a mother of 3 incredible children. One of those children, Garrett, her son, who was 23, died by suicide in 2017. And we know that that means the trajectory of their family, of their life, changed forever in that moment. Just a few years after the loss of Garrett, Julie and Scott found themselves evaluating exactly how they could make a difference, how they could turn some of their pain into purpose, and the idea for Garrett Space was born. A space specifically created for hope, healing, and connection for young adults with mental health challenges. The program has been running on some level for 5 years now, but at the time of this recording, Garrett Space, the facility, is about to break ground. I can't wait to share this episode with you so that you can hear about Garrett and the incredible journey that the Halperts are on with their community in order to build a groundbreaking, one-of-a-kind facility to help our youth better socialize, better connect, and better adjust with their mental health challenges in today's world. So I hope you'll join me in welcoming Julie today. Welcome to the podcast, Julie. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and talking today about your loss and your son and what you're doing in his honor as part of his legacy, but also as a way to help others. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I would like to start with asking you to share your loss story, if you would do me the honor.
Yeah, well, Garrett was an incredible young man. If you knew him, you adored him. He was one of these people that just lit up a room, and he was incredibly bright and talented, one of the top tennis players in the state, just also an amazing poet. He was a Renaissance man. He had a lot of amazing qualities and had tons of wonderful close friends and a close family that adored him and who he adored as well. But despite everything that he had going for him, he had struggled from time to time. really throughout his life. And really, things got too much for him. And then he died by suicide when he was 23 in 2017. So we were devastated. We were shocked, as many people are who lose a child this way. We knew that he had struggled, but we could never imagine that he would do this. He always was very interested in seeking help. He also was there for other people who were struggling themselves. He wanted to be a therapist. He ironically worked at a suicide prevention nonprofit just before he passed away for high school students. So he was very in tune with everybody else's struggles, but he had a very difficult time with his own. He felt alone in his struggles, and that there was ultimately something wrong with him. And we lost him. We lost a real gift to this world.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for the vulnerability and the bravery to come on, because I know that even though there's so much power in sharing our stories, and we do become more accustomed to carrying it, and it still is never easy to do. It's still always difficult to share. So I appreciate that a lot. I would love to know a little bit more about the loss with the family. I know you said that it's you and your husband, and Garrett is your middle child, and he has an older sister and a younger sister, correct?
Yes.
So I'm guessing, based on the ages, that one of them may have just been barely out of the house at that time, probably at college, and the other one maybe had been out a few years. Sounds similar to my journey. Do you want to share at all about how you navigated, especially the first few years afterwards, and what it looks like now, because you are about, 8 years out?
Yeah. So initially, our older daughter, you are absolutely right. She was living in a rural town called Millerton in the Hudson Valley, New York, pursuing her musical career. She had a really lovely village of amazing friends, but she was well out of college. And she wasn't, I would say, physically as close to Garrett. So the younger one and he were closer. But having said that, so he was 1 year out of college, but his sister had literally just left to study abroad in France. She was there just about a week when he passed away. It was a junior semester abroad. I still very much give so much credit to her French family, her host family, which was this lovely woman and her daughter, who was a few years older than Madeline. They said to her, "You're going to leave your suitcase here because you're going to come back and we're going to be here for you." And she had to get on a plane, fly from France to come back for the funeral. But she knew that if she stayed home, it would be worse because she couldn't go back to school. She wasn't registered to go back to Duke, was where she was at the time. And she did go back. And honestly, being able to be in a place that was so far away and so foreign and so new with such a supportive family was actually really helpful to her. And her father and I had planned to visit her even before our son passed away. And we kept that plan. And 6 weeks later, we visited her. And I remember feeling the same way, like it's easier to be here. It's new, it's foreign, it's not familiar. There's no reminders of our son. Although, of course, I was thinking how wonderful he could be there with us. But so that was her situation. She really struggled. She still really struggles. To her credit, she has gotten a lot of therapy and really pushed through it. And she actually has started something called the Dinner Table. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but it's an amazing program where it's a peer facilitated organization where young people get together with others and they have peer support discussions of losing someone. So she just started that in Brooklyn, New York, where she lives. It's very hard as a young person, especially she was 20. It's very hard because your friends don't know what to say or do. Look, adults, they have a hard enough time being there for you, right? But when you're a kid, you just don't want to, say or do the right thing. She had a boyfriend at the time and they stayed in a relationship after this happened, but she didn't really feel like anybody understood what she was going through. She couldn't really bare her soul to too many people. It's very hard for her. Her older daughter had she was older, so she was 26. She had a cohort of people, not just her age, but older, who were just very in touch with their emotions and feelings and were just incredibly supportive to her. I call it was an amazing village. I believe in some ways it was better for her than even her father and I could be because we were so immersed in our own grief. So that was really helpful to her. I'm sure she was feeling the pain just the way her sister was, but like at anniversaries of our son's passing, I would say to her, well, it's been 3 or 4 years out. People don't reach out as much. I understand that. And she said, well, I tell my friends, the anniversary is today. I need to hear from you. I need you to reach out. So she wouldn't be shy to ask for what she needed, whereas I didn't feel comfortable doing that. I will say in terms of our family, we are extremely close. We had just taken a big family vacation, the 5 of us, that previous December. I think it was one of the best trips we ever had. The girls were very supportive of their brother. They worshiped him and he just adored them. And that really was helpful to us. Also, our relationship, my husband and I have very strong marriage. We're really there for each other. And I remember the minute that we learned about Garrett, my husband just hugged me and said, we're going to get through this together. And I'm sure you know this from your own research, a lot of relationships don't survive the loss of a child or end up in divorce. And I always viewed my husband as the only person who was really with me in this boat navigating these stormy seas. So we really were there for each other. And we also both very strongly felt that we have to keep it together and go on for the sake of our daughters. I have spoken with other children whose, parents had lost a child, they've lost a sibling, and they said that they lost their parent too when the child died. And I just refused to let that happen. It's hard to do that. But we just both vowed, we got to be there for these kids. They didn't deserve this. And I will always say, I've said it to them, I don't care about how great my life is from here on in. I had a great life. What I want is for them to have as good as possible lives, despite the loss of their brother.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that. And that's incredible to hear. I'm really interested to look up, and I'll link in the show notes that it's appropriate if you tell me it is, the dinner table, because that's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Is it like an online support group, or do they actually eat? Are they getting together physically, or is it an online
they're getting together physically. I think they might have had a couple of virtual sessions, but the whole point of it is to get together in person. Yeah. And I don't know if they literally have dinner, or they have a meal, or they get together at a coffee shop, and they, the person who's facilitating it goes through a short training, and then they host the discussion. It's usually about a dozen people.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. A lot of therapy can happen around the table. Of course, you're speaking to a former chef. So I leaned into thinking about people gathering around, even just, like you said, even if it was just a snack, just the idea of gathering around a table in community and the amount of support that can come up in that situation anyway. And the fact that she's leaning into that is really great. I would love to be able to share that.
Yeah.
It sounds amazing.
It's everywhere. You can be trained anywhere in the country to facilitate these sessions.
That's incredible. I have stayed in the space of mother loss since that's my space. I got different trainings and accreditations and things after when I decided to branch off from the podcast and do the community. About a year ago, I had so many requests for sibling support and directed people elsewhere because I wasn't going to lead a sibling support group. But my son does now. My son and two other young women that have also lost their siblings co-facilitate with him, and that space is just over a year old. And this year they added a second time every month to it because once wasn't enough. They said people are asking for other dates or a second offering. And so, the dinner table model sounds really interesting. I may have to tell my son that he could look at doing something like that in Kansas City. He's really well plugged in. He's a realtor in Kansas City. And it just seems like something that he might enjoy, being something that isn't just online, because the support groups he leads are online.
That's amazing that he does that, because she had a hard time finding anything like that seemed helpful to her.
Yeah.
So that was specific to sibling loss.
Right.
So that's great that he does.
Siblings feel so left out, and it's hard enough to find support. But when you do, it seems to either be too general or it's geared towards the parents or the mother. Even though I don't feel like there's enough support out there for us either, there's definitely more out there than there is for siblings. So
and the dinner table, it's just a loss of any kind. So a lot of the big losses were parental losses. They weren't necessarily by suicide. Very few sibling losses. So I'd like to find out about his group for her. She might find that interesting. So
So I also loved hearing that your husband, Scott, and you are so very strong, because you're right. I've talked to, at this point, hundreds of loss survivors, and many of them are either the mother or the father. I draw a lot of parents, and there's a lot of devastation that happens in the wake of a suicide with families. And I am not married to the father of my children. However, he was my college boyfriend. And so we were given to each other at the right time, because I don't know what I would do without him. He should not be as supportive as he is. He doesn't have children of his own. He was only married briefly once before. He has the most compassion of anybody I've ever met. He's never tired of the situation. And you find the struggles when it's the same, when it's their child. And then I've also seen my situation where the parent who's not the biological parent, after a year or two, bails because they can't handle the grief anymore.
Right. Sure.
I cannot, like you, I feel like GR and I are in this boat together. And He's my rock to crash against because I don't know what I would have done without him.
Yeah.
So, and Tom, and what your family navigated in the years that followed, at some point you had this nudge. I'm assuming, or did it come from somewhere? Talk to me about where the inspiration came from to start the work that you do, which in the reading that I did, it looks like the help you've been providing goes back 5 years, and now you are building Garrett's space as a physical facility. But will you go back a little bit into what started that?
Yes. So we really felt like our way forward was to find a way to help other young adults because, as you, I'm sure, know, when your child dies this way, you're just consumed with regret. And what could I have done differently to save him? And it's the worst feeling, just feeling so helpless, like you had no control over this. As a parent, you always feel like you have control, even when your kids are young adults. So we thought our way forward would be to try to find a way to help young adults who are navigating this very difficult world, a world that's harder than ever. And literally, both of us were at his graveside one day, and we both came up with this idea for a place that young adults would go, sort of like a retreat or to have a reset, where they would be surrounded by caring, compassionate individuals and learn strategies and ways to live in a very, very hard world, non-medically focused. So, I like to think that with substance abuse, there are welcoming rehab facilities. When someone is really struggling with, let's say, drug addiction, they're not told to go to the hospital, to go to the ER. But when someone was struggling with their mental health, one of the only options is to go to the ER. Not saying if they're actively suicidal, they should be there. There are many people who need something more than the regular visits to their therapist, but are not actively suicidal. And I view this as sort of mental health rehab in a way. So we both wanted to build a physical space that would be sort of a retreat. Our son really, when he was struggling, he was very into yoga and meditation. He wanted to go to like a meditation retreat. He was very much struggling with his mental health, so that wasn't a fit. But we decided that we would create this place. And we live in a community. We're in Michigan. I'm surrounded by the Michigan Medical Center, which is one of the best in the country. We have many well-connected friends and friends of friends. We literally got them around our dining room table one day and we floated this idea. And they all just said, this is it. Like, we desperately need this. They joined our journey. Many of them are still with us on this journey. In 2019, we started a nonprofit called Garrett Space. And the goal is to build a residential center for young adults ages 18 to 28. It's a time of transition for these young adults. There are very few services like this, if any, for all the challenges they're navigating, whether it's the breakup of their first relationship, the transition from high school to college or college to the working world, social media, which is pervasive and makes so many of them feel inadequate, just gun violence, climate change. There's so many things in this world that are oppressive for young people. And they don't have the same sense of connection that they once did, especially since COVID. I think COVID made things even worse. So we came up with this idea. And because we knew the center would take a long time to build, we started rolling out wellness program. And we've been running it for about 5 years now. It started virtually because it started during COVID, where young adults meet a couple of times a week for a mood and movement activity in a support group with peers. And it's been unbelievably everything we could have hoped for. All the young adults have found a community, a place where they feel not judged, a sense of belonging and connection, and just feel really supported by their peers as well as the facilitators who've been trained to support them. And it bodes really well for what we're rolling out the residential center. So they now meet monthly for a social gathering, and those bonds are just cemented even further. It's just been absolutely incredible. We were fortunate to find a place. So we wanted a place in nature because we feel like nature itself is very healing. We wanted people to be outside and away from their own environment, which might be toxic, or just we wanted a reset for them. And we found this property on 76 acres, not far from Ann Arbor, with an existing 5,000 square foot Frank Lloyd Wright replica house on the premises. We looked at it. It had been on the market for a while, and we said, this is unbelievable, and there's no way we can afford it. We met with the person who owned the property, and she was very taken with our mission, and she gave us a discount on the property and also agreed to finance the acquisition, making it affordable to us. So we purchased that a couple of years ago, went through the process of getting it rezoned for our purposes because it was rezoned for residential. We had to switch it to something called planned community because we're not a medical facility. And it's been a very long journey, but within the next few weeks, we expect it to break ground. It's going to be a 10,000 square foot residential center. And then we'll have a 2,000 square foot creativity studio for activities like art, music, movement, journaling. We'll have outdoor, walking trails and fire pits. And the whole point of it is it's a very home-like atmosphere. We'll work with a leading class architect who specializes in trauma-informed design. And so it's going to be this incredible resource. We also plan to offer this on a sliding scale. There'll be a fee for service, but it should be available for anyone, regardless of their ability to pay. And the whole community has really rallied around us. This is going to be an asset for our community. It's something for everybody to be really proud of. So because we know that one Garrett space isn't going to be enough to fulfill the incredible needs out there, our goal is to research this, make sure it reflects best practices, and make it a replicable model so that we could have a Garrett space Chicago, a Garrett space LA, maybe a Garrett space Australia someday. My husband had left his job as a lawyer just before we started this. Before Garrett passed away, he was trying to figure out what his next step was, and this sort of landed in his lap, and he's been working more hours on this than he ever did as an attorney. I'm a journalist, and I still do that full time, and I teach a journalism class, so I've been sort of doing this part time. But it's been a really incredible way for us to feel like we are making a difference and honoring your son's memory.
Yeah, it sounds incredible. So let's back up to the wellness programs that you've been doing since 2020. Do those happen? I'm assuming not on that site. You're having it off site somewhere, or kids are coming together just once a month. Am I understanding that?
No, they're coming together a couple times a week, but they're virtual. Now they're virtual. We will still retain some component of virtual programming that young adults sometimes find it very convenient. Meeting once a month in person for a social activity. Once we have to retrofit the house, we have to make it accessible for, disability accessible. And we have to put a fire suppression system in the house, which will actually take a few months because doesn't have a commercial fire suppression system. And once that happens, we plan to move them to the existing house to have their programming. So then it will be in person. And then even when we have the facility, it'll be about 22 residents for the residential center. We expect to take an additional 10 for day programming.
So you'll be able to help about 30-ish people at any given time. And the program, when they do the residential, is going to be 30 days, right? So you'll be able to help a lot of people in a year's time.
Yeah, we're thinking a few hundred people. Yeah.
Somehow you guys need to be sure you connect with Paws for Patrick because they provide emotional support animals.
Oh, we definitely want to have, pets, cats and dogs on the property. Absolutely. And in the residence for sure. So I'm glad you mentioned that. I had not heard of that organization. We should reach out to them.
Yeah, but then it shouldn't surprise me because there's a lot of crossovers here as far as when you talk about suicide and stigma. A lot of people think you're talking about prevention. Some people think you're talking about loss. There's a lot of crossover with it. And to hear you talking about what you're putting in the facility and the healing nature of this to these young people, it's almost item for item the pieces that I put in the healing retreats that I now host here in Puerto Rico for moms. So it's to get them away, it's to get them outside and into nature, it's to do yoga, meditation, trauma healing, nature therapy. It's all the things that you're talking about, but that's mom's healing, right? So here that therapeutic cross point is so interesting to me. It speaks the bigger picture, which one of the words you said was transitions. Transitions for kids are so hard, but the kids that fit in the realm of what you and I are talking about, the 15 to 28-year-old group that we've seen since 2014, the increase of suicides had just spiked in 2014 and has continued to go up. And I believe we lose a lot of them to transitions that are bad. Going back to college, going home, going into the job force when they leave college. There's all these different transitions that occur in a young person's life. And like you said, in today's world, more than ever, it's a very difficult world to live in. That might pick on you a little bit. What happens nowadays to our kids is that times I don't even know what. It's so exponential. And yet our brains and our development physiologically and biologically haven't caught up. And so to expect young people to navigate what sometimes we as adults have a hard time even knowing how to navigate, we need all these resources and we need spaces. And the key thing that you said that I feel like I harp on all the time in loss is community.
Yep.
The absolute biggest thing that makes a difference to a griever is to have a community that they belong in. And so to hear that for the prevention doesn't surprise me. Well, of course it is, because we have become so disconnected in our society.
It's so true.
And these kids have grown up with the devices in their hands.
Right.
And there's nothing like spending time in person with somebody. There's nothing like being able to hug them, being able to physically relate to them, to go sit down and have a conversation, to sit around a dinner table and have healing conversations. There's no replacement for that. There's good things to add to it, but there's no replacement to it. To find healing and to find connection with other people is at the heart of how we need to heal. We could say our community as a larger space, but if we had more community and more safe spaces, it would make a difference. And I'm going to guess you have seen some really incredible things with these kids when they get into community together.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've had people, they have an annual picnic. We've been there a couple of times. And one of them said, I wasn't sure I could go on this particular night. It was a group night, and she reached out to the facilitator and they had her come to the group. And she basically implied that she wasn't sure she was going to make it. And this really turned her around. And to see them all together, these are a lot of kids with serious anxiety, social anxiety, and just embracing each other. Also, we initially thought the groups are closed, but they can stay as long as they want. The average stay is about 6 months. And what's really beautiful is that as newer members come, the older members are sort of their mentors. And there's a whole sense of feeling of great self-esteem if you can help somebody else, right? So there's just an amazing synergy. And of course, we have an incredible team, facilitator team. We're very blessed. We're very much like a family, and they're incredible and compassionate. So yeah, it's really a lot of magic happening. And we have an annual fundraiser. Initially, it was virtual. And we reached out to, I don't know if you're familiar with the Ken Burns documentary on young adult mental health. We had the two filmmakers who made that movie speak at one of our fundraisers. They did a panel discussion with one of the young adults in the film. And they heard about what we were doing. And he said, why are these everywhere? This is just common sense. And it really is just common sense. Like, teach people about interesting, healthy ways to live a good life, a good, healthy life. Connect them with their peers, show them that they're not alone, and give them a sense of belonging. Don't let them take away their feelings of shame, and you've got a recipe for success. I mean, it's really not that complicated.
I recommended it on one of my, about once a year, I do a what to watch, what not to watch episode, what's out in the world. And I think the last time I expanded it to even like some different books and media articles out there that people could read. I want to hear you talk a little bit about, as you get ready to break ground, is it still the plan to try to open by 2026, or has that changed? And what does the journey for the next year or two look like to get it to where the main facility is open?
Yeah. So I'm looking at our timeline right here. We expect to complete construction in the fall of 2026. And then what we'll do is we're going to run it as a day programming for a year after that. And then the following year, we'll open it as a residence. We'll use the house. Center. No, but we'll be able to use it. It was owned by a restaurant owner, so it's got an amazing industrial kitchen. So we'll have nutritious cooking classes there. We're going to have our offices there, welcome center there. There'll be some day programming there as well. So we definitely will use the house.
Where you guys actually go in and help run it.
So we are on the brink of hiring our first executive director. We really want someone who's got a lot of experience in the nonprofit world and running places like this. And we literally are interviewing candidates this week. We're interviewing our final candidates. We expect to remain the face of the organization and continue reaching out to potential donors and fundraising. Day-to-day on-the-ground stuff will be in the hands of the executive director, who will be a professional and have a lot of experience in this. It's a very ambitious, as you say, and it's new. It's a new model, never been done. So we want to make sure we've got somebody we've hired that's really, really qualified.
It's a model that's so needed. In the grief space, we find that there's not a lot out there either. Just doing the retreats that I've done here, too, with a third one coming in May, the need for this for healing is so immense that to even hear you talk, that's what I feel like I need to try to do, is to establish a model that shouldn't just be in Puerto Rico. There should be models everywhere where there can be real places for moms or dads or couples or siblings to come and do deep trauma healing after a significant loss or occurrence in their life.
Yeah, I looked for that after my son died, and I couldn't find anything like that. There are a lot more now. I'm glad to hear about yours, because I do think it's needed, and I was not able to find, there could be a good article in focusing on these places.
There's still not very many out there. And most of them, because now I have done the research being someone who's in that space a little bit, and you find a handful, just a few that maybe once a year have like a weekend retreat somewhere or something. But as far as a dedicated space where people can come and do a week or even longer of real involved healing that really gets them out of their world, into nature, into things that are healing, helps solidify habits, helps connect them in spirit to their child, helps do all the things. We just need more of it. We need so much more. And and bravo to you, because we need so many spaces for kids to be able to grow up and mature and feel safe in their emotional health. And we've got to move towards mental health just being a part of our health and not being so stigmatized.
For sure.
And I think things like what you're doing will help pave the way for this generation to be able to grow up and raise kids that have a better attitude towards mental health than what we grew up with. You know, we've had parents that would be considered of the boomer generation. So that generation didn't look at mental health the same way. To see where our kids are, that they're wanting to lean into that they're wanting to be compassionate and aware is promising, but it means we have to keep forging forward right now to help them lay that foundation so that they can be more mentally healthy and they can be aware of what that looks like. I've had some people be very, in the beginning, kind of on guard about if their child wasn't mentally ill. I don't know how this happened. And for the most part, it doesn't mean everybody that dies by suicide is mentally ill, but it means there was some form of mental illness that occurred. And to understand that just like a physical body illness, this is our largest organ. So to think it can't get acute illness the same as our body can. Like, we also know mental illness is such a broad term and there's so much that fits under it. And it's not something to be ashamed of. Most people in today's world struggle with depression, anxiety, you fill in the blank, one or many of those at any given time. And the more we know, the better we can equip ourselves to live a healthy life and juggle our mental and physical health at the same time. Julie, talk about how my listeners could support Garrett's space if this is something they feel led to respond to.
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned, this is very ambitious. It's very expensive, as you can imagine. We are in the midst of the early stages of a capital campaign. We've raised about $9 million towards our $13.5 million campaign goal. We're always looking for financial support. And if you just go to our website, it's GARRETTSSAPCE.org, 2 R's, 2 T's, 2 S's. You can learn about us there. You can see all the coverage on us and all the details of our wellness programming and our plans for the residential center. But yeah, we're always interested, and we're interested in hearing from people who are experts and feel like they have some knowledge to lend us in this space, because we want this to reflect best practices. That we did a year-long search of other similar types of facilities that was led by a woman whose job it is to place young adults in residential facilities. And she volunteered her time because she felt so strongly that what we are offering does not exist, and it definitely needs to exist. And what's very unique, in addition to this being non-medical, is the short stay. Many psychiatric facilities are very long, 6 to 9 months or sometimes a year. They're very expensive, and it's very disruptive for a young adult. So we plan to really, again, have these special tiers. It's a supplemental support option. It's not a medical option. Young adults will continue to see their therapist via telehealth when they're there. So we're not treating people. We're just providing an extra layer of wraparound support. But we're very interested in getting a broad swath of support for people all over the country, because the sooner we can build our Garrett space here and make it perfect and everything it should be, the sooner somebody else who feels there's a need for it can do it in their community. So any support towards developing a great first model, we definitely welcome. And we're always happy to hear from people and happy to answer any questions that you would have.
Okay. And I know that it's really easy to navigate your website, and the donate buttons there, and your social channels are there. And I will post all of the things in the show notes. This has been an amazing conversation. I feel like you came across my path at a really good time as far as with where you're at in your process. I'm anxious to see it unfold and to at least virtually watch it unfold and see as you start to do this incredible, meaningful work. What sort of tidbit would you like to leave us with that would feel hopeful, or something you'd like to say to other parents or other people that are wanting to do something like this or help in any way?
Well, I think that there's power in helping other people and finding a path that has purpose and sort of harnesses your talents and your interests to do something that is meaningful to you. I'm not suggesting that everybody do what we did. It's really hard to be in this space and to talk to people who are struggling. We kind of felt like we were destined to do this because we're so connected to so many great people who could be helpful. And this was right for us. But I would say, like, you can find your own path. You can find what works for you, but it's really helpful to have some sort of a purpose, something that occupies your time and is really meaningful to you. It doesn't even have to be in the mental health field, but just something that brings a spark of joy. I mean, I always like to say I'm never going to ever feel totally, unbridled joy ever again. Part of me is, my heart is always going to be dull, but I do feel like having a sense of purpose and a passion for something where you can really channel it in, whether it's exercise or volunteering at a homeless shelter or whatever it is, that can help. That can be helpful in finding a way out of the darkness.
I agree. And there is so much power in finding some purpose from your pain. And like you said, as another mother, I completely embody you saying there will always be a dullness to what I feel. I believe that we can feel joy again. We can have hope, and we can even have promise for the future, but it doesn't look the same. It's not the same as what we had before. It will never be exactly the same. And like you, I feel like I was so fortunate to have my son, and I've had a good life, and it's not over, but now I get to pour my heart into work that in some ways is more meaningful than anything I've ever done. And yet I wish I didn't have to do it. So,
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. And kudos to you for your work too. So.
Well, thank you, Julie. This has been great. I'm so appreciative. I will make sure I have everything after we are done recording so that I can put everything in the show notes. So Please feel free to reach out if there's anything I can ever do, especially once you guys get open and going. It'd be probably a blink of an eye, and it'll be a year and a half from now. And we can have another chat if you want, and always consider me a resource if I can help in any way. So.
Thank you. I'm happy to add you to our mailing list too, so you'll get the updates.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And until we talk next time, thank you so much. It's been amazing. And I do hope that we talk soon.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye. So thank you for joining me today, Grievers. If today's episode resonated with you, please consider subscribing to get weekly updates when I drop new episodes. And please take a moment to rate and review the podcast with 5 stars, especially on Apple Podcasts. Your support helps so much, because it's how others are able to find the podcast and this community. Remember, though it may feel impossible now, hope and healing are within reach. I invite you to connect further by visiting my website, theleftoverpieces.com, where you'll find support, legacy options, retreats, resources, online Zoom groups, and so much more. Together, we can navigate this journey of healing. We can put our hearts, our leftover pieces, back together. And as they say here in Puerto Rico, poco a poco, juntas podemos. Little by little, together we can. Take care and talk soon.